Welcome to another episode of Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Smith with treeservicedigital.com. And thanks so much for joining. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe to our channel. If you're on the podcast, just listening to the audio, like and subscribe to your favorite podcast player. We're on all the major ones. And today we've got Sam Sadoff, a CPA that works with tree service companies and also used to be a tree service company owner, on with us, a repeat guest. Sam, how you doing, man? Welcome aboard.
I'm well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not bad. Can't complain. Nobody's listening, as they say, right? So, um, well, good, man. Yeah, so you work with tree service companies now, kind of helping them with their profitability and things like that. And I know your CPA is kind of your background, kind of what you do mainly. But working with tree service companies, you specialize in the niche, and you actually used to own a tree service company in the Cleveland market. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of your background there.
Yeah, so zooming all the way back, I'm a CPA. As boring as it started, it's as boring as it was. And I started in big firms and I slowly made my way down to small business, consulting, tax planning, and that's where I've been sitting since. At a certain point, I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I evolved from, bean counter to outsourced CFO to entrepreneur. And that journey brought me to the tree service industry. We had a tree service business that we started together with Wes back in the day. And we went at it from a different angle than many tree service businesses start up, and we went pretty far. We had, a few crews going, shy of 5 million in revenue, and we sold it. So, starting with the end and getting to that. So that is my journey from CPA, which is certified public accountant, not certified public arborist.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's kind of why this conversation is top of mind too. Is just going from zero to pretty much a startup, a little bit of tree service industry knowledge, hardly any at all actually. But knowing the numbers is arguably one of the most important things you can know in your business. I mean, of course, there's sales and marketing and getting the new customers and all of that, but you don't know your numbers, you don't know how to profitably scale and intelligently like buy equipment, make decisions, and things like that. So since that was your background, I think that was key. And you guys growing so fast and knowing how to do it that
We definitely approached it that way, right? We approached it numbers, we approached it like everything fit into a spreadsheet. We had to learn a lot about the industry, and we did. We networked a lot. There's a lot of good guys in the space, but it was always first and foremost number-based decisions in terms of sales and hiring and equipment and marketing. And, it works. It's a great industry. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And you and I have chatted about this many times, that knowing the numbers first before you make any decisions on marketing or sales and how to grow your business, it is the most crucial part of it. I mean, that's the make it or break it for hitting the goals.
really is. Yeah. And I remember when we started, we got the digital web presence going, the website, all the ads and paid platforms and all of those things going and cooking pretty good. And then you told me how much direct mail you were sending out, weekly, monthly. And I was like, wow, these guys are really pushing the pedal to the metal with the marketing. So I was just impressed with, A, how much you guys were allocating for marketing, and then B, monetizing all of that marketing spend to get guys to go out and do the appointments, the estimators, and then get the work schedule, get it completed, get paid, and all of that. So that's what a lot of people's challenge is, how much should I spend on marketing? Where should I go with it? And then B, kind of knowing what to charge and what the profitability numbers should look like, your overhead, what type of equipment to buy next, and all that, which you have the experience in doing. And speaking of spreadsheets, we're going to go over some of that, I think, here today, right?
Yeah. We have I've worked on a tool for pricing to help tree services price, but I just had this memory that popped into my mind. So I don't I don't know if you remember the first conversation we had, but I'm sure my first question was, how many leads can you get me? And you were like, bro, you don't even have a business yet, right? You don't even have anything. You
There's no
started
presence at all online. So wait, hold your horses there. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
from day one, it was we realized that there's an engine that you can create, right? If you can effectively put the marketing together and it works, right? If you work it, it works. And there was the lead generation, and then we figured out the pricing, and then things just started to fill into place. And yeah, like you're saying, so the spreadsheet. So, since I sold the business, and even alongside having the business as a CPA, I just naturally I talk shop. So anybody that I networked with or anybody that I've worked with in the tree space, it always comes down to looking at it from the numbers, looking at it from a financial, translating everything into dollars. And I noticed that there was always this like fear. There was always this like unknown, this gray area where, it's like I got guys and I got, crews are going on and I have equipment and my phone is ringing and like a bigger business is just bigger headache. Like it just doesn't work. And there's just this like angst or gray area or fear that it's like I have everything going, but I like get what other people are doing. Like I see it's working for them, and why isn't it working for me? And I started to see this common denominator where it was hard to synthesize all of like the day-to-day operations into the language of a dollar. So I came up with this tool that I'll share my screen in a second. We'll go over it, but I came up with this tool that was the back of the napkin math that we used in our business to not get granular to the penny and drive yourself crazy, but to keep like a North Star on what should my pricing be in a range and what should my crew do, and like how do I have this high level metric of like a sort of compare myself to. So I call it the tree service profit pricing calculator. And I'm just gonna, maybe I should just go ahead and share my screen and pull that out.
Yeah, perfect name for it. I'll give you the ability to share. And I do remember that first conversation. The first time we talked, I think, was after maybe a trade show back 4 or 5 years ago. And then we spoke on like a Zoom meeting like this, and you told me what the plan was coming up. And we have a lot of meetings, so I didn't know whether or not it was going to come to fruition or not, right? We have a lot of meetings. Yeah, we didn't. We have a lot of meetings with all kinds of tree companies, here at Tree Service Digital. So then we met again a couple months later, and it was time to put everything together as far as the web presence and everything. And then from there, man, you guys are off to the races for the next 2 or 3 4 years. And so, yeah, it went by really quick. So let me
Right.
do this.
And then all the fun.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see where that is there. There we go. Yeah, yeah, you can go ahead now. Yeah, so we're going to look at the tree service pricing profit calculator. Perfect name for what this does for companies if they want to see kind of the numbers in their business.
Can you see my screen?
It's loading. Yep, yep, there it is.
Okay, so before I go through this on a high level, again, the background of this was to help us create during the day-to-day stress and anxiety, guys not showing up and equipment breaking and phones not ringing, how we feel that they should, and just like lots of feelings and pulled in different directions. Something that we could always like zoom out and see that, okay, things are still fitting. So if I'm hitting this high level number and my gross profit is where it should be, and I have the right amount of guys, then like, even though I don't sense it, like I know I'm in the right direction. And if the opposite is true, then, I can sort of pick it apart. So when we talk about pricing, it's always very tricky because you have to start somewhere, right? You start with like, well, what do other people charge? Or what should I charge? Or what am I comfortable charging? Or what have I previously charged? Or fill in the blank way of doing it. Do I just want to get the job so that I have guys and so I'll do it for anything and I'll undercut somebody? But I think that as an accountant, the way that we're taught to think about pricing is how much profit do you want, right? You always got to start backwards because revenue or sales is really nothing more than profit plus expenses. And that's sort of, as simple as, your first class in accounting. So even starting from that point is sort of, well, I want to make $1 million. So how do you tie it down to reality and actually, draw a line in the sand and move on there in a linear way that makes sense? So the way that I approached it was after speaking to a bunch of, other tree guys and seeing our own business and doing some research, I broke it into two pieces, right? One was gross profit and one was just overhead and operating expenses. And the reason I did it like that was because for similar sized tree companies and for many tree companies, there is a fixed overhead, right? Rent and um, certain office expenses and office labor and your gas, your fuel expense becomes pretty standard and dump fees and repairs and maintenance if you can manage it. But then there were direct costs, right? So we have our equipment and we have our guides, and that goes up and down, and it's tied to how much revenue we do. So I'm going to show you just, as we walk through this, how I think it through and how we can get to a daily price, an hourly price, a crew price, and how we could start to think about my crew as like a unit. This is what it costs. So if I buy low and I sell high, then I know there's enough meat on the bone. And that's what I call gross profit, right? That's the meat on the bone. After I do everything I need to do, this is what's left for me. And then I take it to my overhead. Like, okay, now I have all these mouths I need to feed. But then what's left for me at the end? So I don't want to say arbitrarily, but I arbitrarily start with, in this example, a 60% gross profit, right? So that means how much profit is after the revenue from the job, paying the guys, and figuring out a cost of equipment. We'll get to that again at the bottom of how that plays into, how much meat is on the bone and how many heads, how many mouths you have to feed. But it's essentially on a high level, it's figuring out what you want your gross profit to be, figuring out your crew labor, because that's sort of, buy low, sell high. That's what we pay to make that's what we pay to make the revenue, right? You have equipment after that, which is, my method of, it's just an accounting method of taking your equipment, crane, bucket truck, tools, anything, and thinking about it not in terms of a monthly loan payment and not in terms of something that I just have to eat the cost of, right? Because if you're paying a few $100,000 for a crane, like you got a bill for that somehow, right? You can't just eat the cost of that. So a way that we could think about how to turn that into a granular, like a day-to-day or a week-to-week cost. And then we sort of reverse engineer that into a price. Because if I know that my costs are 40 cents and I want to have a 60% gross profit margin, so then I know that I have to sell for $1, so I have 60 cents left over. And that's the math that we use to keep this high level sort of balance as we were growing and keeping the day-to-day stable. So taking it back up to the top, just as for example, if you decide that you want 60% to be your gross profit, and we could play with this number throughout, but if you want your 60% for gross profit, and then you go in here and you identify all the people you have on your crew, you can add or remove for whatever you'd like. But in this example, we have a handful of guys. I have their hourly rates. I have some overtime calculated in there because it increases the average hours that we work. So if you take your guys, your hourly rates, the average amount of hours they work a day, convert it into effective with the overtime, throw some payroll taxes on that. In this example, if we have these 5 workers working an average of 10 hours a day, it's costing us about $1,500 a day on a high level. So using that example of, if I sell it for $1 and it costs me 40 cents and I have 60 cents left over, the math down here tells us, well, if we have no equipment and everything is just guys, so I need to sell for $38.61 a day to have 60% left over gross profit. That covers the average. If I could sell that amount of work and get it done daily, then even while I'm managing the BS of the day-to-day, like I know that plus minus on average, my gross profit's going to be there. But then we have to account for the equipment. It follows the same math ultimately, but it is an accounting, it's just a straight line accounting way to say, all right, if I buy a piece of equipment and I have it for X amount of years, and then I know that I'm going to be able to sell it after those years. If I buy a crane for 250 grand and it's already used, I'll keep it for 5 years. And then when I sell it, I could probably flip it for 100 grand. So that means that I used 150 grand of crane in 5 years. Now, it might depreciate in value in a different way. It might depreciate faster or slower or whatever it is, but just on a dollars to dollars, this is, I'm going to sell it and buy the same 250,000 crane and it's just going to be same in and out. It just takes all this equipment, breaks it down into an annual cost. So if I spend 250 grand on the crane, I'll sell it for 100. So I use the 150 grand, 30 grand a year over 5 years. Now, a lot of us know from our softwares, if it's Jobber or Single Ops or whatever it is, how many days we worked on average, just pulling out that number. So again, back to the napkin sort of iPhone calculator math is if I take my average days worked and I take my cost of the equipment so that I can get a rough cost of equipment per day. It doesn't include the maintenance, it doesn't include the overhead, but it gives me some sort of guide to set this minimum price again. Because if I come back to $1 of sales and I want 60% profit, so what's my cost to make sure that my sale is right to get that profit? So in this example, with these pieces of equipment and these values and those useful lives, I'm calculating that my cost is just north of 400 bucks a day, just spreading that cost over time. So with the same math from the daily crew up here brought down to the daily equipment, I need to have a minimum of about $1,000 on the calendar just to cover the equipment, right? Just to make it worthwhile to buy that equipment, have that equipment, use it to produce revenue. And then the rest is just, putting those two numbers together, plugging it together. If I know that this is my price for equipment, this is my price for the crew to make sure that I have enough profit. So there you go. I have this framework for figuring out that I need to do this amount of revenue a day. And then that gives me, comfort, and it gives the people that I've worked with and my clients comfort to feel that, okay, well, now I know what I have to run with. Now I know how to make a decision in terms of how much I can afford for marketing and how many leads do I need and how can I afford to hire a salesperson, because things start to fall into place. Once your pricing is right, you can afford to feed all those mouths because there's enough meat on the bone. And that's this little piece down here that I've included. It's a sort of simulation for you to really take the above, which is sort of isolated. It's just a calculator of, all right, this is an expense and this is a percentage. But if I say, all right, based off of, Sam is telling me that I have these guys and this equipment and I need to do 5 grand a day. So let's just take it a step further and say, okay, so 5 grand a day or 4,900 bucks a day at 200 days a year on average. That's just shy of $1 million in sales, right? That gives you something to reflect on. How do I get to $1 million in sales? Can my crew do $1 million in sales? Maybe they could, or, maybe the issue is that they're only doing 3,500 bucks a day. So now what do I do, right? Is it my pricing that's off, or am I not, on the guys? Are the crews not producing well? And it gives you the ability to, like we were saying, like you track it. It's profit first, it's numbers first, it's translating things. It starts to give you this perspective to plug the Legos together to sort of think about it beforehand before you make decisions. And then if you follow through in the simulation, all right, fine, great. Let's say that I can do that 4,900 a day, 200 days a year. And I know what my cost is going to be because it just pulls down from, from above. But essentially I have these guys for 200 bucks a day, 200 days a year, sorry. And I have the equipment for 200 days a year. So my gross profit is 588,000. So Sam's telling me that this is a good way to think about pricing, and my crew, I think, could get there, and maybe I'm the issue and I need to sell better, but I think I can sell $1 million. Right now we're doing 700, whatever it is. I can get to $1 million and they can produce it. And that means that if my expenses are in line for 40%, then I have 588 meat left on the bone. So I'm just going to go look at my numbers from last year or just put some things down on a piece of paper. Like my overhead is easy, right? Like I know what my rent is, I know what my people in my office are, and my softwares and my marketing, etc. That's why I break it out into these two things because you have like two ways of thinking about it. And then you could drop that number in here and say, all right, this is what my estimate is going to be. And if, if I think that I'm going to need to hire another salesperson to hit that million, so I could just plug that number a little bit higher for the year. Sorry, they're locking me out of this. But it's a calculator, so it'll update down here. And this gives you the sort of, it stretches your thought process to be more of like an accountant where, if I'm a day-to-day tree guy, I'm thinking about, showing up to a job, making sure that they accept it, making sure there's clearance for the crane, making sure that the site is going to be a safe, and that I can get it done in time, that my equipment is good, that my guys are showing up, that I can keep them happy, and I can just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And this is something that you can, when you zoom out and you start to get that like, feeling of like, is it really going where I want it to go? Or am I just, spinning the wheel? This sort of gives you the ability to plug in your numbers and see if you're headed in the right direction, right? So this is just a little tool that we used. I've sort of formalized it and I've been, giving it out. There's like I think we said there's going to be a link that we're going to be able to give out for people to download it. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I know that you and I have shared many conversations on, helping tree services going from that, thought of I want revenue and going through this marketing process and like wondering about, how their sales skills are, how their production is, and like actually helping them get to that next step.
Yeah, I think this is gigantic for tree service business owners because it gives them kind of a under the hood look of their business and what all they have to consider before they go on these sales appointments and price these jobs, right? Because as you mentioned when you first started this spreadsheet, if you're going out there and just trying to be kind of the low cost leader or trying to just make sure you undercut the job a little bit just so you get it, to keep your guys busy, well, you could be losing money ultimately by doing jobs that way. If you're not pricing your products and services like, profitably and have enough margin there, like you said. So if you're looking in there and you want to make a 60% gross profit, and then you determine, how much your actual crew costs are, labor costs, and then equipment costs, then you can make an intelligent decision on kind of what you need to price that job at. And so this is big. I mean, this is a calculator that people can get and punch the numbers in and play with it and kind of toggle them and see what the difference would be on the bottom line of their business by just changing up some of the numbers, right? You change up some of your overhead cost, you change up some of your equipment cost, you change up, and sometimes you can probably increase your prices 10 or 15%, and it makes a dramatic difference on the bottom line number that you spit out in your business. But you don't know all of that until you go through this exercise. So Sam's, really did a lot of work on putting this pricing calculator together. And he's working with tree service companies who just want to get a good snapshot of their business and helping them implement this to make sure they get their pricing correctly. And then there's also a further kind of extended, more granular coaching program that they can probably enroll in with you to kind of really get everything else dialed in too, correct?
Yeah, so we're putting together a program to help tree service companies really be profit forward thinking and get to achieve their goals, achieve their profit goals, help really take this to the next level and not have it be, right? I call this like iPhone. This is like iPhone business. Like you're sitting on the couch and that when you're not in the day to day and you're like running through like, is everything working? Like, are my guys okay? Am I paying too much? Can I pay him more? Is my pricing good? And you're just like flipping through numbers on your iPhone while you're watching TV. But it sometimes needs to get to the next level where it's not just playing with the numbers and then pushing pause and then going back in, jumping in the deep end again. Like you got to bring it with you. You got to implement it. And yeah, absolutely. So we're putting together that program. It's not launched yet, but we're putting it together now. If they, go ahead and download the calculator, you'll get some information about how to get on the wait list for that program. And then the other thing that I think is important because and I've had many conversations with tree service owners about pricing, right? Because it's a very sensitive topic. Some people have been doing it this way forever, and the industry is getting hard, and there's new businesses, and there's no right or wrong. That's why I say it's profit first. And this is the tool that gives you the ability to think about it. You might think that it has to be this way that I've been doing it until you say, all right, great. If it's going to be that way, I'm only going to make 50 grand. But if I feel like I should be making X amount of dollars with this crew, this it gives you the ability to get up the next day and do something different and start to think in a different way. So yeah, I think that, my goal is to really take my experience from what we did and what we put together, and we built this company and we sold it to help as many tree surfaces as I can. But yeah.
That's great, man. One of the things that most people probably know when some people don't, but I would probably, venture out to say most people kind of know their labor costs. But when you get down to that equipment cost, it can be like this gray area as to what is this actually costing me, this equipment? Because you have several pieces of equipment. Some of them are newer, they're financed, other ones are older and they're paid off. But your spreadsheet there shows the useful life of it. So if you buy it used, let's call it gently used and still has a lot of time left on it. And let's say you get 5 years useful life out of it. Well, then how do you properly allocate how much you should be charging to cover the cost of that on a 5 year period instead of just saying my monthly note is $1,150 or whatever it is? How do you, instead of doing it that way, you kind of know the useful lifespan of your equipment. That's one of the things people will probably gather a lot of information on their financial side of their business by doing that exercise on their equipment side, I would think. And to your point before, we talked about this before, if you have newer equipment, it's going to look a little bit different than if you have used equipment and all of that. You may get a little bit longer lifespan on the newer equipment versus the used equipment. So there's a lot of moving parts to that part, right?
You're an accountant now. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now I've been through the spreadsheet, so I seemingly know the numbers a little bit. Yeah.
Remember when we started out, we had sheets of plywood, and then I remember when we bought our first, like, our arbor mats,
Mhm.
right? So, you put them down on the ground so you're not messing up anyone's yard. I was like, that is a ridiculous amount of money, right? Like, how is that being covered? Like, all right, fine. So, you buy a chainsaw, or you lost this, or you buy another that, or you're going to buy more plywood, and you're like, okay, it's just part of overhead. It's like, part of the cost of business. But at a certain point, things become material. Like, you're not in the business to buy, $15,000 of tools as a gift to somebody, right? There's got to be a line that you draw where I have to figure out how I'm selling this, right? Like, you buy an apple for $1 and you sell it for $2. So if you buy something, a chainsaw, and it lasts you a couple of years, like, you still got to sell it, right? So there's many ways to do it, and accounting really has an unending amount of ways of calculating depreciation. But this is like what I call, like, the KISS method. Like, keep it simple, stupid, something that works, something that's plus minus gonna get you there, right? It's about progress, not perfection, and, like, getting you close to your profit goals, right? Because that's ultimately what this is all about, right? I don't think anybody has malicious intents. Everybody wants to make their, what they feel is appropriate, and they want their business to be an extension of their life and who they are, and that their life works. So I think that this is a big key to that.
Yeah, me too. I think just downloading the spreadsheet. So I'm excited to offer this, right? So we did this video today. It's a really good value add. I think it offers a ton of value for free to get this. So all you got to do, if you go in the description of this video, if you're on the podcast show notes or anywhere else, you can download the spreadsheet by just putting in your name and your email address. We'll have a link there where you can do it, and then you'll get it emailed to you. And I'm assuming they just download it, they make a copy, or how do they do that once they get it?
Yeah, so they go ahead and they click on the link, and they have the ability to receive the email with the calculator.
Got it. Okay, so it's like a Google Sheet, or is it like a Google Sheet? Okay, so yeah, you get the Google Sheet, start punching in your numbers, running with it. If you need additional help, Sam will be available for that. And who better to ask than a guy that owned a tree service company that went 0 to $5 million in just a few years, and also has a background as an accountant, CPA, which he still does today. So I think this has been great. It's going to offer a ton of value for everybody. So we'll put that again. We'll have that link in there. Download it for free. We'll have it down there for quite some time. And then from there, if you need additional help, Sam will open up his coaching program down the line. And no pressure whatsoever on that. Get the calculator first and then play with it for your business. It'll just open your eyes as to what the numbers should be in your business, in your day-to-day operations, what you should be charging, how much revenue you should kind of strive for every day. And yeah, I mean, if you're only working 200, 220 days a year, you got to know what that number is, right? Based on one crew, two crews, three crews. And this calculator will help you kind of pinpoint that. Anything else you want to share, Sam, before we hop off?
I think that's it. I think the biggest thing really, like the reason I put this tool together is to synthesize everything, right? To really bring it all together because a lot of the companies and guys out there are great and they're ready to just do it. And I got the question so many times, and I think that this is, progress, not perfection, but like this is a way to move forward and put it all together.
That's great. Simple enough. Learn your numbers, get the free calculator spreadsheet below, and we'll do this again. We'll do a follow-up meeting down the road once the coaching program launches. But get this calculator now, start playing with the numbers, see for yourself what you need to be charging in your tree service company, and then we'll do a follow-up call down the road. If you're on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe to the channel. If you're on the podcast, like and subscribe to your favorite podcast player. We're on all the major ones. And we got more videos coming up soon, so stay tuned for the next one. Thanks so much, guys.